Terry Jean Bollea was never meant to blend into the background. Born on August 11, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, and raised in Tampa, Florida, he grew up bigger than most kids his age in size and eventually in ambition. But early on, life wasn't all flashing lights and cheering crowds. In school, Terry was teased for his size, called names, and often felt like he didn't fit in. These moments planted a seed in him. If people were going to stare, he'd give them something worth staring at. Wrestling first entered his life through the television. While other kids played baseball or chased neighborhood adventures, Terry sat glued to the screen watching larger than life characters like the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and superstar Billy Graham. Billy Graham's sculpted body and charismatic style left an impression. Terry realized that wrestling wasn't just about fighting, it was about image, presence, and the ability to connect with a crowd. After a short stint in college studying business, Terry drifted toward music. He played bass guitar in local Florida rock bands, hoping to make it big in another form of entertainment, but fate had other plans. A chance meeting with wrestling promoters introduced him to Hiro Matsuda, a legendary Japanese wrestler and trainer. Matsuda was notoriously tough, and on Terry's very first day of training, he snapped his student's leg in a submission holder test to see if the big newcomer had the heart to come back. Months later, Terry returned, leg healed, and determination doubled. At first, Terry wrestled under names like Sterling Golden and the Super Destroyer, but everything changed when he appeared on a local talk show alongside Lou Ferrigno, famous for playing the Incredible Hulk. Terry's massive frame dwarfed even Ferrigno, and a promoter suggested the nickname Hulk. Combined with an Irish-sounding surname to appeal to audiences, Hulk Hogan was born. Hogan's early years in wrestling saw him bouncing around different territories, learning how to work a crowd. His style was never about technical mastery, it was about spectacle. He was big, strong, charismatic, and always thinking about the story he was telling in the ring. Fans didn't need perfection, they needed excitement, and Hogan knew how to deliver it. In 1979, Hogan joined the World Wrestling Federation (WWF) under Vince McMahon Sr., but his first run was short-lived. When Hogan accepted a role in Rocky Roman III as the intimidating Thunderlips, McMahon Sr. was furious. At the time, he didn't want his wrestlers appearing in Hollywood films, believing it distracted from the business. Hogan was fired. Ironically, Rocky Roman III would become a breakthrough for him, giving him mainstream exposure and showing off his natural charisma on screen. When Vince McMahon Jr. took over the WWF in the early 80s, he had a vision to turn wrestling into a national entertainment empire. He needed a face to carry the company, and he knew exactly who could do it. Hogan returned in 1983, this time with the full marketing power of McMahon behind him. The timing was perfect. Hogan had the look of a superhero, the confidence of a movie star, and a message that parents could get behind: train, say your prayers, and eat your vitamins. His matches were built for drama. He'd take a beating, look like he was about to lose, then hulk up, shaking off the pain, pointing at his opponent, and finishing them with a big boot and leg drop. It was simple, repetitive, and absolutely electrifying. In January 1984, Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win the WWF Championship, igniting what became known as Hulkamania. For the next several years, he was unbeatable, holding the title for over 4 years, a record run that remains one of the longest in wrestling history. Hulkamania wasn't just a wrestling gimmick, it was a cultural phenomenon. Hogan's face was on lunchboxes, action figures, cereal boxes, and Saturday morning cartoons. He made media appearances on talk shows, in commercials, and even at charity events, always staying in character as the all-American hero. Children idolized him, parents approved of his wholesome image, and arenas sold out wherever he went. The first WrestleMania in 1985 cemented his place as the industry's top star. Teaming with Mr. T, Hogan headlined the event in a crossover spectacle that combined celebrities, athletes, and wrestling into one massive entertainment package. The success of WrestleMania proved that McMahon's national expansion could work, and Hogan was the driving force behind it. But the life of the hero wasn't without its cracks. In 1985, during a guest appearance on Hot Properties, Hogan put host Richard Belzer in a front chin lock to demonstrate a wrestling move. Belzer passed out, fell, and hit his head, requiring stitches. Although the matter was settled out of court, it showed the risks of mixing real-life physicality with entertainment and the thin line Hogan sometimes walked between performance and reality. Backstage, Hogan wasn't universally loved. Some wrestlers accused him of protecting his position too aggressively, using his influence to ensure he stayed on top. In 1986, Jesse Ventura attempted to form a wrestlers' union to secure better pay and benefits, but Hogan allegedly told management, effectively killing the effort. To his critics, it was selfish. To Hogan, it was business. Then came WrestleMania Roman III in 1987, a moment that would define not just Hogan's career but wrestling history. In front of a record 93,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, Hogan faced Andre the Giant. The image of Hogan body slamming Andre, whether or not the Giant helped by pushing off, became one of wrestling's most iconic moments. It was pure storytelling, the unbeatable hero overcoming the impossible challenge. By the late 80s, Hogan had transcended wrestling. He was a pop culture icon, appearing in films, TV shows, and endless promotional campaigns. Yet even as the cheers grew louder, so did the demands of fame. His travel schedule kept him away from home for most of the year, straining his marriage to Linda and limiting his time with his children, Brooke and Nick. The Hulkamania era was unstoppable, but it was also unsustainable. Wrestling fans, like any audience, eventually wanted something new. By the early 90s, the superhero image that had made Hogan a legend was starting to feel dated. Younger stars were waiting in the wings, and the industry itself was about to undergo a dramatic shift. Still, in the golden years of Hulkamania, Hogan had done what no wrestler before him had achieved. He had taken professional wrestling from smoky arenas to mainstream America, making it $1 billion business along the way. For millions, he was more than just a wrestler, he was a hero. What no one knew then was that the same qualities that had built Hulk Hogan into an icon would one day play a part in tearing him down. By the early 1990s, the landscape of professional wrestling was shifting. The WWF family-friendly product, once the perfect stage for Hulk Hogan's superhero image, was starting to feel outdated. New stars like Bret Hitman, Hart and Shawn Michaels were emerging, and the audience, especially teenage and adult fans, wanted edgier, more realistic characters. Hogan's dominance was beginning to wane. Adding to the challenges was the steroid scandal that rocked the WWF. In 1991, federal investigators targeted Vince McMahon for the illegal distribution of anabolic steroids. Hogan, the company's biggest star, was called to testify in 1994. Fans were stunned when he admitted to past steroid use, contradicting the clean, living image he had promoted for years. While his testimony helped McMahon avoid prison, it left a dent in Hogan's reputation. By this point, Hogan's appearances in WWF were becoming less frequent, and in 1994, he made a career-defining move, signing with World Championship Wrestling WCW. Backed by Ted Turner's vast resources, WCW positioned Hogan as their main attraction from the moment he arrived. His debut was celebrated with a Disney parade, and he quickly defeated Ric Flair to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. At first, WCW presented Hogan just as WWF had, the red and yellow hero fighting for what was right. But wrestling fans were changing. They were no longer satisfied with clear-cut heroes and villains. Hogan's squeaky, clean act began to draw boos from older, more cynical audiences. WCW needed something new to keep fans engaged. In 1996, the unthinkable happened. At Bash at the Beach, Hogan shocked the world by turning heel, aligning himself with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to form the New World Order NWO. Gone was the smiling hero, in his place stood Hollywood. Hogan, dressed in black and white, wearing sunglasses indoors, and openly mocking the fans who once adored him. His promos became arrogant, filled with insults and bragging about his wealth and power. The heel turn was a masterstroke. Fans who had grown tired of Hulkamania now found themselves enthralled by this darker, edgier Hogan. The NWO quickly became the hottest act in wrestling, driving WCW to beat WWF in television ratings for an unprecedented 83 consecutive weeks during the Monday Night Wars. Hollywood Hogan was cool, dangerous, and relevant again. But success in WCW came with controversy. Hogan's contract reportedly gave him creative control over his matches, allowing him to decide how and whether he lost. This often frustrated younger talent, who felt they couldn't get ahead as long as Hogan was protecting his spot. Critics accused him of prioritizing his own position over the company's long-term health. Still, Hogan's NWO run delivered some of the most memorable moments of the 1990s. His matches with Sting, Randy Savage, and Goldberg were major draws, and the black and white NWO logo became a pop culture symbol. Hogan had reinvented himself and prolonged his career at the top. Yet, by the late 1990s, cracks began to show. WCW reliance on older stars like Hogan, combined with chaotic backstage politics, led to declining ratings. WWF, now embracing its edgy attitude era, with stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, started regaining the upper hand. WCW creative missteps, many involving Hogan's storylines, hurt the company's momentum. When WCW was purchased by WWF in 2001, Hogan's future seemed uncertain. He had been both WCW's biggest star and one of its most polarizing figures. But in 2002, Hogan made a surprising return to WWE as part of the NWO. Fans expected him to be booed, but at WrestleMania X8, something unexpected happened. Hogan faced The Rock in a match billed as Icon vs. Icon. The Toronto crowd erupted for Hogan from the moment he stepped into the ring, cheering loudly and even booing The Rock. Midway through the match, Hogan's instincts took over. He began playing to the crowd, bringing back the Hulkamania mannerisms. By the end, despite losing, Hogan walked out to a standing ovation. The reaction was so strong that WWE turned Hogan face again, bringing back the red and yellow. In May 2002, he defeated Triple H to win the undisputed WWE Championship. It was a short reign. His aging body couldn't keep up with a full schedule, but it proved that Hogan could still connect with fans. After his title run, Hogan transitioned into part-time appearances, wrestling in big matches but avoiding the grind of the road. In 2003, he briefly donned a mask as Mr. America in a light-hearted storyline, but injuries forced him to step away again. While his in-ring career slowed, Hogan found a new spotlight in reality TV. In 2005, VH1 launched Hogan Knows Best, a show following Hogan, his wife Linda, and their children, Brooke and Nick. At first, it portrayed him as an overprotective but loving father. Ratings were strong, but behind the scenes, tensions were building. The constant filming strained relationships, and the show often highlighted Hogan's controlling nature, especially regarding Brooke's music career and dating life. In 2007, the family was rocked by tragedy when Nick was involved in a serious car crash that left his passenger, John Graziano, permanently disabled. The incident drew heavy media attention and legal trouble. Around the same time, Linda filed for divorce, accusing Hogan of infidelity. Hogan later admitted this period was one of the darkest in his life. The divorce was messy and public, with financial battles and personal accusations making headlines. His image as the family-friendly hero was unraveling. In 2009, Hogan attempted to revive his wrestling career by joining Total Nonstop Action Wrestling TNA as both an on-screen talent and behind the scenes figure. His arrival generated buzz, but many of his creative decisions, including recycling and woe-style factions, failed to attract new audiences. Injuries continued to plague him, and multiple surgeries left him physically limited. The final blow to Hogan's public image came in 2015, when leaked audio from a private conversation revealed him using racial slurs. WWE immediately cut ties, removed him from their Hall of Fame, and erased references to him from their platforms. The backlash was swift, and for the first time, Hogan was not just a wrestling villain, he was a public one. He issued apologies, calling his words offensive and unacceptable, but the damage was done. Many fans and peers felt betrayed. Others argued he should be remembered for his wrestling contributions rather than condemned for his personal failings. By the time WWE reinstated him into the Hall of Fame in 2018, Hogan's image had permanently changed. He was no longer just the hero of Hulkamania or the rebel leader of the NWO. He was a symbol of both the heights of fame and the dangers of losing touch with reality. The villain turn in 1996 had been a storyline. But in the years that followed, the hero-to-villain transformation became part of Hogan's real life. After WWE reinstated Hulk Hogan into the Hall of Fame in 2018, the move was met with mixed emotions. Some fans welcomed back the man who had helped shape their childhoods. Others refused to forgive, insisting that his past actions outweighed his wrestling accomplishments. For Hogan, the return wasn't about reclaiming his old spot, it was about salvaging what was left of his legacy. Hogan began making more public appearances, but he was careful with his image. He leaned heavily into nostalgia, wearing the red and yellow, telling old stories and meeting fans at conventions. At these events, lines stretched long as people brought vintage action figures, event posters, and championship belts for him to sign. It was a reminder that, despite everything, his connection to a generation of wrestling fans remained strong. He also made appearances at WWE events, sometimes opening major shows or hosting special segments. Yet, the reaction was no longer unanimous. The deafening cheers of the 80s had been replaced with a mix of applause, polite acknowledgement, and occasional boos. Hogan's name still carried weight, but the magic had changed. Away from wrestling, Hogan tried to find new business ventures. He launched a brand of beer, appeared in commercials, and pursued endorsement deals. But injuries still haunted him. His back, hips, and knees were held together by surgeries and metal. Simple activities could be painful, and the physical toll of decades in the ring was undeniable. In his personal life, Hogan remarried in 2010 to Jennifer McDaniel. He credited her with helping him find peace after the chaos of his divorce. Faith became an increasingly important part of his life, and in 2023, Hogan and Jennifer were baptized together. He spoke openly about the experience, calling it a fresh start and a release from the bitterness of his past. Despite these efforts at redemption, controversies continue to circle. In 2024, his son Nick was arrested for driving under the influence, reigniting negative headlines. While Hogan didn't comment much publicly, it served as a reminder that his family's struggles had never fully gone away. That same year, Hogan made what would be his final WWE appearance. The reaction was respectful but subdued. He was no longer the main event attraction or the cultural phenomenon, he was a living piece of history. A reminder of both wrestling's golden age and its complicated past. 7 months later, Hulk Hogan passed away at the age of 71. The wrestling community reacted with an outpouring of tributes. Social media filled with clips of his greatest moments, slamming Andre at WrestleMania Roman 3, posing for fans after a big win, delivering his trademark leg drop. Fellow wrestlers, even those who had clashed with him, acknowledged his impact. Vince McMahon, who had both made and been saved by Hogan more than once, gave a rare personal statement. Without Hulk Hogan, the WWE would not be what it is today. He was our greatest attraction, our most recognizable name, and a performer who brought wrestling into millions of homes around the world. The Rock posted a heartfelt tribute thanking Hogan for paving the way for wrestlers to cross into mainstream entertainment. Ric Flair called him the biggest star the business ever had. Even Bret Hart, with whom Hogan had a strained history, admitted that Hogan's influence on wrestling was unmatched. But alongside the tributes came reflection and debate. Wrestling journalists and fans discussed his controversies as openly as his accomplishments. They spoke about his political maneuvering backstage, his refusal to lose to certain opponents, and the words that had cost him his reputation in 2015. They also spoke about the joy he had brought to millions, the way he had inspired kids to believe in larger-than-life heroes, and the unforgettable matches that still played in their minds decades later. The truth about Hulk Hogan's legacy was that it was neither purely heroic nor purely villainous. It was both. He had been a trailblazer who changed the business forever, but also a deeply flawed man whose mistakes were just as memorable as his triumphs. Wrestling historian Dave Meltzer summed it up in a tribute article: "If you remove Hulk Hogan from wrestling history, the business we know today doesn't exist. But if you remove the scandals, maybe his name is spoken with even more reverence. He is both the reason wrestling became a global spectacle and the reason some fans lost faith in their heroes." For many, the final image of Hulk Hogan wasn't of him in the ring, but of him in interviews during his last years, slower, humbler, and reflective. He often said he wished he had spent more time with his family, been more careful with his words, and treated his colleagues better. In one of his final public statements, he admitted, "I didn't call myself a hero, my fans did, and I didn't always live up to it, but I hope they remember I tried to make it right." The hero-to-villain arc had begun as a storyline in 1996 with the NWO, but over time it became a real-life metaphor for his journey. In the ring, Hogan had been able to turn heel and then win back the crowd whenever he wanted. In life, redemption was harder. Still, the red and yellow will forever be part of wrestling's DNA. Every time a new wrestler tells fans to believe in themselves, every time a child wears a replica championship belt, every time an arena erupts in cheers for a hero's comeback, there's a piece of Hulk Hogan's influence in it. The truth of Hulk Hogan's legacy is that it will always be debated. Some will focus on the scandals, others on the magic of Hulkamania, and most will acknowledge both. But whether loved or hated, he will never be forgotten. His life, with all its contradictions, will continue to be told as a cautionary tale, as an inspiration, and as a defining chapter in wrestling history. In the end, Hulk Hogan lived and died exactly as he wrestled larger than life, impossible to ignore, and leaving a story that fans will be talking about for generations to come.